The E-2C Hawkeye's voice cuts through the radio at 11:55 a.m. Gypsy 207 close out. Bogies launching from Bomba. 2 contacts heading north. Commander Leo Enwright checks his scope. He's sitting behind Commander Joseph Connelly in the rear cockpit of an F-14A Tomcat. Call sign Gypsy 207, 20,000 feet above the Mediterranean. They've been flying combat air patrol for 90 minutes. Routine work. The USS John F. Kennedy sits 130 kilometers north of the Libyan coast, steaming east toward a port visit in Israel. January 4th, 1989. Clear skies. No weather to hide in. Gypsy 202 flies 3 miles off their wing. Lieutenant Hermon Cook at the controls, Lieutenant Commander Stephen Collins working the radar. 2 F-14As from VF-32 Swordsman holding the Eastern Sea AP station, while the carrier group transits past the Gulf of Sidra. 2 more Tomcats from VF-14 cover the western station, escorting A-6 intruders on exercise south of Crete. Bomba airfield sits near Tobruk. The Libyans keep MiG-23 Floggers there. Fast interceptors, Soviet build, exported to half the world's problematic air forces. Enwright's flown against them in exercises, never in combat. The F-14 community shot down 2 Libyan Su-22s back in 1981, but those were different airframes, different circumstances. Close out, 207. We're tracking, bearing 175, range. Enwright watches his scope. The contacts resolve. 72 miles. The briefing this morning emphasized likelihood of confrontation. Kennedy's battle group commander stood in front of the ready room and told them Muammar Gaddafi was nervous about the Rabta facility. The United States government accused Libya of building chemical weapons there, 600 miles southwest of where the F-14s are flying right now. Gaddafi issued threats. Washington dispatched the Kennedy. The logic was predictable. Show presence. Assert freedom of navigation. Dare Libya to respond. Connelly keys the radio. 202. Come left. Standard intercept. They turn, not toward the contacts. Away. The geometry matters. If the Libyans want to avoid engagement, this gives them an out. They can turn south, return to Bomba, claim they launched to observe. International waters, international airspace, everyone goes home. Enwright keeps his eyes on the scope. The MiG-23s are climbing. Altitude 8,000 feet now, speed 420 knots. Heading north, directly toward the F-14s. They're not turning back. Collins reports from Gypsy 202. The engagement timeline starts here, though nobody's fired anything yet. 72 nautical miles separating 2 pairs of fighters. Closure rate building toward 1,000 knots. The F-14s carry 4 AIM-7 Sparrows and 2 AIM-9 Sidewinders each. They launched before the deck crew finished loading the full complement of 4 Sparrows and 4 Sidewinders. 6 missiles per aircraft instead of 8. Connelly and Cook didn't wait. The mission brief said launch immediately, maintain patrol posture. MiG-23s carry AA-7 Apex missiles, radar-guided 12-mile range. The Flogger's look-down capability isn't as good as the F-14's AWG-9 radar system, but at 8,000 feet with the Tomcats silhouetted against sky, the Libyans have a decent radar picture. Enwright watches the range close, 68 miles, 65. The MiGs maintain their northern heading. Close out, 207. Bogies continuing north, no course change. The E-2C acknowledges. Somewhere in Kennedy's Combat Information Center, the Air Warfare Commander is watching this develop on larger scopes with better information feeds. He'll make the call about weapons authorization. For now, the F-14 crews fly, watch, and wait. 60 miles. The Kennedy battle group shouldn't be here. Not politically, anyway. Operationally, They're 130 kilometers north of Libya in international waters, which is legal. But the timing, January 1989, barely 3 weeks into the new year, reflects calculations made in Washington about Muammar Gaddafi's tolerance for American naval presence near his coastline. Rabta changed the equation. The facility sits 90 kilometers south of Tripoli. American intelligence agencies concluded Libya was building chemical weapons production capability there, probably with help from West German firms and possibly the Soviets. The Reagan administration went public with accusations in late 1988. Gaddafi responded with threats. The usual rhetoric about American imperialism, sovereignty violations, military consequences. So the Navy dispatched the Kennedy. Not to strike Rabta, the facility was 600 miles from the carrier's current position. The mission was demonstration, freedom of navigation exercises, sail past the Gulf of Sidra, maintain air patrols, dare Libya to object with actions instead of words. The aviators got briefed differently than previous Mediterranean deployments. Commander Connelly sat through a special session the day before these patrols started. The battle group commander stood at the front of the ready room and explained that unlike earlier encounters with Libyan aircraft, this time expect them to press. Gaddafi was genuinely worried about an American strike on Rabta. He might order aggressive intercepts to prove Libya could defend itself. The rules of engagement hadn't changed. Demonstrate hostile intent, get cleared to fire. But the definition of hostile intent got specific attention in the briefing. If Libyan aircraft repeatedly turn toward you after you've maneuvered to disengage, that counts. If they're armed and closing inside missile range, that counts. You don't have to wait for them to shoot first. That last part mattered. August 19, 1981, two F-41 F-14s shot down two Libyan Su-22s after one of the Sukhois fired an AA-2 Atoll missile at the Tomcats. The Libyan missile missed. The American Sidewinders didn't. Clean self-defense case. But waiting for the enemy to shoot first only works if their first shot misses. The 1989 rules acknowledge that reality. Armed aircraft demonstrated hostile maneuvering, closure inside weapons range, sufficient to authorize engagement. The air warfare commander on the Kennedy held that authority. He could clear the F-14s to fire without waiting for Libyan weapons release. Connelly and Enwright discussed it briefly before manning up this morning. Neither wanted to shoot down aircraft that weren't actually attacking. Neither wanted to die waiting for confirmation. The professional calculation came down to reading the tactical picture correctly. If the MiGs kept coming after repeated disengagement attempts, that told you everything. The geopolitical context didn't matter much at 20,000 feet. Rabta, chemical weapons, Gaddafi's paranoia. None of that changes radar geometry or missile kinematics. But it explained why the Libyans might scramble interceptors against a routine cap. They were nervous. Nervous adversaries make mistakes. The Kennedy carried a second message beyond freedom of navigation. USS Theodore Roosevelt was preparing to deploy, destination also Mediterranean. Two carrier battle groups operating near Libya simultaneously would represent significant combat power. The last time the Navy concentrated that much force against Gaddafi was Operation El Dorado Canyon in April 1986, the airstrike on Tripoli and Benghazi following the West Berlin disco bombing that killed 2 American soldiers. Whether Libya intended to shoot down American aircraft today was unknowable from the F-14 cockpits, but the Bomba radar station had activated multiple tracking radars along the coast. Ground controllers were talking to the MiG-23 pilots, guiding them toward the F-14s. That level of support suggested more than simple observation. Enwright watches his scope. The MiGs continue north, range now 58 miles. Enwright acquired the MiGs on his AWG-9 radar when they were 72 nautical miles south, bearing 175 degrees, almost due south. Altitude 8,000 feet, speed 420 knots. 2 contacts, flying in formation. The AWG-9 is the reason the F-14 exists. Hughes Aircraft built a radar system that could track 24 targets simultaneously and engage 6 of them at different altitudes with Phoenix missiles. The Navy wanted an interceptor that could protect carrier battle groups from Soviet bomber formations attacking from beyond visual range. The F-14 Tomcat became the platform wrapped around that mission requirement. But the AWG-9's real advantage today isn't multi-target tracking. It's look-down capability. The radar can distinguish aircraft from ground clutter and sea returns, which means the F-14 can fight effectively at any altitude. The MiG-23's radar, either the TP-23 or Sapphire 23ML, depending on which Flogger variant Libya bought, has look-down problems, not crippling, but significant enough that altitude tactics matter. Connelly descends, coming down to Angels 3. The 2 F-14s drop from 20,000 feet to 3,000 feet. They're flying at 475 knots now, below the MiG's altitude, putting the Libyan fighters between them and empty sky. The MiG radar operators have to look down at the F-14s against ocean surface returns. Difficult lock geometry. Meanwhile, Enwright's scope shows the MiGs perfectly. They're higher, silhouetted against clear sky, no background clutter complicating his radar picture. The MiG-23 ML Flogger carries AA-7 Apex missiles, NATO reporting name for the R-23 weapon system. Comes in 2 variants, infrared homing and radar guided. The radar version has about 12 miles of range in good conditions. The infrared seeker needs a clean stern aspect shot, which the current head-on geometry doesn't provide. If the Libyans fire Apex missiles in radar mode at this range, closing through 50 miles now, the F-14s will see them coming. Missile launches show up bright on radar. Time to react, time to chaff, time to maneuver. But letting the MiGs get inside 12 miles means entering their weapons envelope. That's the tactical problem Connelly has to solve. The range continues to close. The combined speed of both formations approaches 1,000 knots, almost 17 miles per minute of closure. At this rate, they'll merge in 3 minutes. Closeout 2:07. Bogies now 45 miles, maintaining course, descending to 5,000 feet. Enwright's tone stays professional. The radio calls sound routine. They aren't. The E-2C Hawkeye, orbiting somewhere north of the carrier, is monitoring Libyan radio communications. The MiG pilots are receiving guidance from ground controllers at the Bomba radar station. Someone on the ground is feeding them vectors, headings, altitude commands. That level of ground-controlled intercept support indicates tactical intent. The Libyans aren't just flying around. They're being directed toward the F-14's Cook's voice from Gypsy 202. I've got them on TCS, the television camera set, a camera mounted under the F-14's nose with a telephoto lens. At this range, visual identification through the TCS means the Libyan aircraft are close enough to see what they're carrying on hardpoints. Cook can probably make out weapons configurations, drop tanks, stores. 40 miles separating the formations, the F-14s complete their descent to 3,000 feet. The MiGs level off at 5,000 feet, 2,000 feet above the Tomcats. The geometry is head-on, both pairs accelerating toward each other. Enwright runs calculations. At current speeds, they'll be inside 20 miles, solid Sparrow range in about 70 seconds. Inside 10 miles, danger close for head-on missile shots in 2 minutes. Connelly makes the decision. Coming left, standard offset. The F-14s turn away from the MiGs, not aggressive maneuvering, just a course change to the left, opening the angle, giving the Libyans an opportunity to break off. The MiGs don't break off. 7 seconds after the F-14s turn left, the MiG E-23s turn back into them. 11:58:07. The Libyan fighters adjust their heading to re-establish a head-on intercept geometry. Ground controllers at Bomba are giving them vectors. The radio intercepts confirm it. The E-2C is listening to Libyan transmissions, hearing the guidance calls. Standard intercept doctrine says, turn away, see if the other guy wants to fight or wants to avoid. The F-14S turned away. The MiGs turned back toward them. That's one. Connelly tries again, coming right this time. The F-14S execute a right turn, offsetting from the MiG flight path, creating separation, giving the Libyans another chance to disengage. At 11:59:16, less than 1 minute after the second turn, the MiG-23s adjust course again. They turn back toward the F-14S, head-on approach re-established. That's 2. The range is inside 40 miles now, closure rate unchanged. The MiGs maintain speed around 450 knots. The F-14S hold 475 knots. Simple addition. They're eating 17 miles of separation per minute. Third turn. Connelly offsets left again. Different angle this time, more aggressive displacement. The idea is to force the MiGs to make a hard decision. Commit to pursuit or break off? Hard turns cost energy. If the Libyans are just on patrol, they won't keep maneuvering to maintain intercept. The MiGs maneuver to maintain intercept. Turn complete by 11:59:45. The Bomba controllers are doing their job. Every time the F-14S offset, the ground radar tracks the geometry change and transmits new headings to the Libyan pilots. The MiG-23s follow the guidance, 3 deliberate turns back toward the Tomcats. Enwright watches the range tick down. 35 miles, 32, 28, 4th turn. This time Connelly doesn't announce it, just banks the F-14 into a descending left turn. Gypsy 202 follows. They're testing the pattern now, seeing if the MiGs will react the same way every time. They do. The Floggers turn back into the F-14S within 15 seconds. That's 4. Close out 207. Bogies have turned back into us 4 times, still closing. The air warfare commander on the Kennedy acknowledges. He's watching this develop on the ship's displays, multiple radar feeds, the whole tactical picture. He knows what 4 deliberate turns mean, but the rules of engagement require demonstrated hostile intent, and 4 turns might still be aggressive posturing, rather than actual attack preparation. 5th turn. The F-14S break right, harder this time. The MiGs are inside 25 miles, close enough that the AA-7 Apex missiles they're presumably carrying could launch in another minute. The Libyans follow the turn. They match the F-14 maneuver and re-establish head-on geometry. That's 5. 12 hours, 0 minutes, 53 seconds. The MiGs are inside 20 miles. Enwright makes the call. Bogies have jinked back at me for the 5th time. They are inside 20 miles. 5 deliberate turns to maintain intercept, guided by ground radar. Armed aircraft. The TCS footage from Gypsy. 202 showed weapons on hardpoints, continuing to close despite repeated disengagement attempts. Every element of the tactical picture points to hostile intent. Enwright continues, master arm on. Connelly flips the switch. The weapon systems go hot. AIM-7 Sparrows and AIM-9 Sidewinders ready to fire. In Gypsy 202, Cook does the same. Both F-14S now have live missiles selected, radar locks prepared, fingers near triggers. The range is 18 miles. Closure rate still almost 1,000 knots. The MiG-23s continue north, directly toward the F-14. No course change, no altitude change, just steady flight toward merge. Connelly transmits to the Kennedy. Closeout 207. Request any additional information on bogies. The response comes back negative. No additional intelligence. The MiGs are exactly what they appear to be. 2 Libyan fighters on an intercept vector, 16 miles. The weapons load bothers Enwright more now than it did during pre-flight. 4 Sparrows, 2 Sidewinders. Gypsy 207 launched before the deck crew finished loading the full 8-missile complement. Standard loadout is 4 AIM-7s and 4 AIM-9s. They're flying with 6. Not a problem if everything works. Big problem if it doesn't. The AIM-7 Sparrow is a radar-guided missile. The F-14's AWG-9 illuminates the target with continuous wave radar energy. The Sparrow homes on the reflection. Effective range depends on geometry. Head-on shots work out to about 20 miles in clean conditions. The missiles the F-14s are carrying are AIM-7M variants, upgraded seekers, better reliability than earlier Sparrow models. Reliability is relative. Sparrows have a reputation for failures. Wrong switch settings, radar breaks lock, target maneuvers outside the seeker's gimbal limits. The missile goes stupid and flies ballistic. Aviators joke about Fox 1 shots. Sometimes they work. Enwright checks his switches. Master arm on. Sparrow selected. The radar is tracking the lead MiG-23 solid. Range 14 miles. The geometry is good for a shot. Almost perfect, actually. Head-on within 5 degrees. Closure rate high, clean radar return. But 14 miles is outside the PK envelope. Probability of kill. At this range, against a maneuvering target, the Sparrow might track or might not. Closer is better. 10 miles is comfortable Sparrow range. 5 miles is nearly guaranteed. The problem is, the MiGs are carrying missiles too. Enwright doesn't know if they've armed weapons. The radar warning receiver hasn't detected MiG fire control radar locks yet. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. The Libyans could be ready to shoot, waiting for range to close. Close out, 207. Connelly's voice on the radio. Calm, professional. Requesting weapons free? 13 miles. The Kennedy's air warfare commander has been watching this develop for 8 minutes. 5 deliberate turns by the MiGs to maintain intercept. Armed aircraft closing inside missile range. The tactical picture satisfies rules of engagement criteria. The authorization comes back. Weapons free. Cleared to engage. 12.9 miles. Enwright makes the call. Fox 1. He squeezes the trigger. The Sparrow drops from the belly pallet. Motor ignites. Missile accelerates toward Mach 4. The F-14 shudders slightly as 500 pounds of weapon departs the airframe. Enwright watches the missile track on his scope. Watches the radar maintain lock on the MiG. The Sparrow doesn't guide. Something wrong with the setup. Enwright will figure out later he had a switch in the wrong position. The missile flies stupid, passes wide of the target. Connelly executes a 30-degree turn to the left. Cook in Gypsy 202 turns right. The section splits. Both F-14s turning back into the MiGs from different angles. Standard 2-plane tactics. Make the enemy choose which Tomcat to engage. Create crossing angles. 10 miles. Enwright fires again. Fox 1. Second Sparrow off the rail. The missile tracks initially, then loses lock. The MiG-23 is maneuvering now. The pilot probably saw the first Sparrow miss and broke. The second Sparrow can't hack the turn, goes ballistic. 2 missiles fired. 2 missiles wasted. 4 Sparrows loaded, 2 remaining. Cook's voice cuts in. Tally-ho, 11 o'clock high. They're turning on me. Then Collins from the back seat of Gypsy 202. They got one off. Confusion. Enwright thinks the MiG's fired. He punches chaff, releases bundles of radar reflective strips to decoy incoming missiles. But Collins meant Cook fired. Gypsy 202 Sparrow just left the aircraft. The missile tracks. Clean radar lock, good geometry. The AIM-7 flies into the right intake duct of the trailing MiG-23. The Flogger shudders. Black smoke streams from the engine section. The pilot ejects. 12:01:57. First kill. 1 MiG down. 1 still flying. The second MiG-23 is still in the fight. The lead, Flogger, the one that didn't take a Sparrow through the intake. His wingman just ejected behind him, and he's alone against 2 F-14s. He turns hard right. Probably instinct. Wingman gets hit. You brake. Try to deny angles. Try to survive. The MiG-23 is pulling, streaming slightly right, the pilot cranking the stick to get his nose around. Connelly follows the brake. Gypsy 207 executes a hard right turn, tighter than the MiG's radius. The F-14 can pull, especially down here at 3,000 feet with good airspeed. Variable geometry wings swept back. Connelly loading Gs onto the airframe, closing the angle. Enwright watches the geometry develop on his scope and through the canopy. They're visual now. The MiG-23 is right there, maybe 2 miles away, turning hard. The Flogger's wing is swept back for high-speed flight, but the pilot's maneuvering like he's trying to rate fight the Tomcat. Bad decision. The MiG-23 isn't a dogfighter. 12:02:06. Connelly's at the MiG's 6 o'clock. Perfect stern position. The Flogger is in front of them, still turning, trying to reverse. Enwright already has his hand on the weapon selector. They fired 2 Sparrows, both missed. Gypsy, 202 fired 1, got a kill. That leaves Gypsy, 207, with 2 Sparrows remaining. But stern aspect, close range, this is Sidewinder territory? Connelly's thinking the same thing. Going Fox 2. The AIM-9 Sidewinder is an infrared homing missile. Point the seeker head at something hot. Jet exhaust, afterburner plume. Wait for the tone that means the seeker's locked. Pull the trigger. Simple weapon. Reliable. The AIM-9M variant. The F-14's carry is all aspect, meaning it can lock from any angle, but stern shots are gimmies. Connelly flips the weapon selector to Sidewinder. He's waiting for the growl in his headset, the audio tone that confirms seeker lock. Nothing. No tone. The Sidewinder seeker isn't locking. Connelly checks his switches, checks his selection. Everything looks right. The missile just isn't cooperating. Enwright's shouting now. Select Fox 2, shoot Fox 2. The range is closing. They're overtaking the MiG. 1 mile separation, maybe less. Connelly's still not getting tone. He switches back to Sparrow. Maybe the Sidewinder has a problem. Maybe the seeker's cold. Maybe there's a malfunction. He flips to AIM-7, starts to set up for a radar shot. But they're too close. Stern aspect overtaking. The geometry is wrong for Sparrow. The missile needs some separation to track properly. Needs the target not to be pulling away from it. Connelly switches back to Sidewinder. They're at 1.5 miles now. The MiG is still turning, still trying to reverse. Connelly adjusts his aspect, points the nose, waits. The tone comes. Finally, the Sidewinder seeker locks onto the MiG's engine exhaust. The growl in Connelly's headset confirms it. He pulls the trigger. The AIM-9 drops from the left wing station. Motor ignites. The missile accelerates off the rail, tracking hard toward the MiG-23's tailpipe. Flight time is maybe 2 seconds at this range. Impact. The Sidewinder hits the Flogger's fuselage just aft of the cockpit. The warhead detonates. The MiG-23 comes apart, pieces separating, fire blooming from the fuselage break. The Libyan pilot ejects. Canopy goes. Seat fires. Parachute deploys. The pilot's in the air, under a good chute, descending toward the Mediterranean. 12:02:36. Connelly transmits to the E-2C. Gypsy 207, Splash 2. 2 Floggers down. 2 good chutes in the air. Both MiG-23s destroyed. Both Libyan pilots successfully ejected. The engagement is over. Enwright checks his watch. From master arm on to second kill. 1 minute, 43 seconds. From initial MiG launch at Bomba to both aircraft destroyed, 7 minutes approximately. The F-14s descend to several hundred feet and turn north, high-speed egress back toward the Kennedy. The immediate aftermath is radio calls and fuel checks. Connelly reports both kills to the E-2C. Gypsy 202 confirms both parachutes observed, both Libyan pilots in the water. The Kennedy's air warfare commander acknowledges, directs the F-14s to return to the carrier. Neither Tomcat took battle damage. No missile launches from the MiGs. The engagement ended before the Libyans got weapons off. Enwright's radar warning receiver never detected fire control radar locks from the Floggers. Either they never armed their missiles or never got to the point of attempting launch. The F-14s egress north at high speed, low altitude. Standard procedure after air-to-air engagement in hostile airspace. Get out fast, stay low, make yourself hard to target. Libya has surface-to-air missiles along the coast. SA-2S, SA-5S. Various Soviet systems. No point giving them opportunities. Fuel state is acceptable. The engagement burned gas, maneuvering, afterburner use during the hard turns. But both aircraft have enough to reach the Kennedy without tanking. They'll trap aboard with comfortable margins. The debrief will happen in the ready room. Intelligence officers will want every detail. Timeline, geometry, weapons employment, switch settings, everything. The two Sparrows that failed to guide from Gypsy 207, they'll want to know why. Enwright already knows the answer. Wrong switch position on the first shot. He'll admit it in debrief. Second shot, the MiG maneuvered outside the seeker's tracking capability. That happens with Sparrows. Gypsy 202 Sparrow worked perfectly. Cook and Collins put the missile exactly where it needed to go. The MiG's right engine intake at 5 miles range, surgical shot. That's the kill you want. Clean radar lock, good geometry, proper switch settings, missile performs as designed. The Sidewinder confusion on the second kill will also go into the debrief. Connelly tried to select AIM-9, couldn't get tone, switched to Sparrow, realized the geometry was wrong, switched back to Sidewinder, finally got lock. Combat is messy. Switches don't always cooperate. The important thing is, he worked the problem and got the shot off. 1.5 miles when the Sidewinder left the rail. Close range for air-to-air missiles. The AIM-9 is designed to work from that distance, but it's tight. The seeker had to acquire, track, and guide in about 2 seconds. It did. The missile hit exactly where infrared seekers want to hit. Hot metal, engine section, guaranteed kill. The TCS footage will prove useful. The television camera set recorded the entire engagement from both F-14s. The video clearly shows the MiG-23s carrying weapons on their hardpoints. AA-7 Apex missiles visible on the rails. That kills Libya's narrative before it starts, because Libya will claim this was unprovoked aggression. They always do. After the 1981 Gulf of Sidra incident, Tripoli insisted the Su-22s were unarmed reconnaissance aircraft on routine patrol. Gun camera footage proved otherwise. The Sukhoi fired first. The F-14s responded in self-defense. This time the TCS footage shows armed MiG-23s maneuvering aggressively toward American fighters. The video will show the repeated turns, the deliberate intercept geometry, the closure inside missile range. Combined with the radio intercepts of Libyan ground controllers directing the MiGs toward the F-14s, the evidence package is complete. Connelly and Enwright will be anonymous for years. Operational security. The Navy won't release their names publicly until much later. For now, they're just 2 F-14 pilots from VF-32. The carrier appears ahead. Kennedy is recovering aircraft, the deck active with launches and traps. The F-14s enter the brake, drop gear and flaps, set up for landing. Gypsy 207 traps first, 3-wire, good landing. Connelly and Enwright shut down on the deck, canopy opens. the deck crew is already preparing to paint a kill marking on the nose. Both Libyan pilots ejected successfully. The F-14 crews watched the parachutes deploy, watched them descend into the Mediterranean. 2 men in the water about 40 miles north of Tobruk. Cold water, January. Survival time depends on exposure suits, life vests, rescue response. Libya never recovered them. Whether they tried and failed or never launched rescue assets, the records don't say. The Libyan Air Force had helicopters capable of overwater search and rescue. They didn't use them, or they arrived too late. The fate of both pilots remains officially unknown. The geopolitical response came faster than rescue helicopters. Libya accused the United States of attacking unarmed reconnaissance aircraft on routine patrol over international waters. Gaddafi called for a United Nations emergency session. The narrative was predictable. American aggression, Libyan victims, sovereignty violation. The Pentagon released the TCS footage 2 days later, January 6, 1989. The video showed everything. MiG-23s with AA-7 Apex missiles on hardpoints. Armed fighters, not reconnaissance aircraft. The footage also showed the repeated turns, the aggressive maneuvering, the closure geometry that demonstrated hostile intent. Libya's claim collapsed. The evidence was too clear. Armed fighters, ground-controlled intercept, deliberate closure inside missile range after 5 separate disengagement attempts. The video didn't lie. Commander Joseph Connelly retired from the Navy years later. In interviews decades after the engagement, he reflected on the 7 minutes between MiG takeoff and both kills. The timeline compressed in memory, the way combat does, but the specific details remained sharp. The sparrows that failed to guide, the sidewinder that wouldn't tone, the moment the second MiG came apart after the AIM-9 hit. He remembered watching the Libyan pilots eject. Both shoots good, both men alive when they hit the water. That mattered to him. The engagement was legitimate, the kills clean, but the pilots survived the shootdown. What happened after wasn't in American hands. The F-14s involved in the engagement both survived long enough to become museum pieces. Brno 159610, Gypsy 207, eventually got upgraded to F-14D configuration and served with VF-31 before retirement. The Navy gave the aircraft to the Smithsonian's Udvar Hazy Center near Dulles Airport. September 30th, 2006, formal unveiling. Connelly and Enwright attended as honored guests. The Tomcat sits in the museum now with full VF-32 markings from the 1989 deployment. BU number 1, 59437, Gypsy 202, ended up at Marg, the boneyard at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona. Last F-14 in the storage facility, awaiting museum placement. The aircraft hasn't been scrapped. Eventually, it will go on display somewhere, probably with proper documentation of the January 4th, 1989 engagement. This was the second time F-14 Tomcats saw air-to-air combat, both times against Libya, both times in the Mediterranean near the Gulf of Sidra, both times with VF-41 and VF-32 squadrons, different crews, same aircraft type, similar circumstances. The first engagement in 1981 involved Su-22 fitters. The second engagement in 1989 involved MiG-23 Floggers. Both engagements lasted minutes. Both involved aggressive Libyan intercepts against American fighters on routine patrol. Both ended with Libyan aircraft destroyed and American aircraft undamaged. The 1989 engagement proved the F-14's capabilities against modern Soviet-built fighters. The MiG-23 was a capable interceptor, exported worldwide, flown by multiple air forces. The Tomcat demonstrated superior radar, superior missiles, superior tactics. 7 minutes from scramble to splash. 2 kills. Clean. Connelly's final comment in a 2006 interview. "We did the job we were trained to do. The missiles worked. The training worked. Both Libyan pilots survived the ejection. That's all I can ask for."